If your business runs JD Edwards, you've probably heard the term CNC thrown around. Configurable network computing. It's the technical backbone that keeps your entire JDE environment healthy, secure, and performing. But here's what most business leaders only find out after something goes wrong. The CNC function is almost always under-resourced, underappreciated, and held together by one very tired person. So today I'm sitting down with two of the best in the business. Barry Williams and Hemant Sharma are JD Edwards CNC specialists who between them have got decades of experience across environments of every size, every industry, and every level of crisis. We're going to cover what CNC actually does in plain English. We're also going to talk about why neglecting it is a risk that your CFO hasn't priced in, what the managed services model genuinely looks like in practice, and what the future of JDE looks like with AI, OCI, and orchestration all in the mix. I'm Sacha Blomer, and this is ERP Unlocked. Let's get into it. Welcome to Barry and Hemant, our CNC specialists. It's lovely to have you today. Could I get you both, I shall start with Barry. Can you tell me about the human story? How did you end up becoming a JD Edwards CNC specialist?
Oh,
yeah.
kind of a long story. I'll try and keep it short. I had a background in development and project management and EDI. Was working in a company in Cape Town at the time. A colleague left the company, joined another company. And a couple of weeks after that, I got a phone call saying, Barry, we're implementing this new software. I know you're a tech nerd. You might be interested in having a look at it. So we set something up. Turned out that it was JD Edwards. So at the meeting, they had obviously the customer. They had a consultant from the UK that was installing JD Edwards at the time, and they had a business partner. So they went through it. The technical consultant ran through all the nerdy, low-level technical things, aspects, and that got me really excited. And they obviously went through all the other software aspects to it, which was always interesting. I went away feeling fairly positive about it. A couple of weeks after that, I had a phone call from the business partner to say, we would love you to come and work for us. So I think I probably resigned on the same day and joined at the time the JD Edwards business partner. I worked for them for a while. And then went out and partnered directly with JD Edwards back in mid-2015, 2016, around then. And it's really just been an awesome journey from that point onwards.
Right. Oh, Hemant, there's not many kids who grow up saying, I want to be a CNC consultant. What's your story?
No, I was a fresher actually at the time. I just got an opportunity to give an interview. I just went with a friend who was having an interview and I was not even called for that. And the interviewer asked me, do you know about JD? I said, no, I've never heard of it. Then eventually, actually, because I was a fresher and they were okay with that. And then I joined and I started with it. And eventually, obviously, I got an opportunity and obviously it developed on me. And obviously, I was more into breaking the system and installing, upgrading, and a lot of security problems and all initially. But eventually, obviously, it started with knowing nothing. But then obviously I got to know a lot of things and obviously it is too much interesting. I still enjoy the CNC work.
Right.
Yeah, that's how it is.
So for anyone who's listening who uses JD Edwards but doesn't live in the technical side of it, how would you explain the CNC role in plain English? Like what does a CNC specialist actually do?
Do we have all day?
Oh, like that.
Okay, again, try and keep it simple. So CNC stands for Configurable Network Computing. This comes down to the underlying building blocks that JD Edwards created that enabled all of the rocket science that makes JD Edwards work as a system. So it's things like database, network, operating system, the software itself. And it's really just managing and using all of those and optimizing those to meet the particular customer requirements.
Yeah, as Barry suggested, right, it is mainly an operational layer actually between your hardware and your actually end user applications. And obviously, most of the times, end users don't even notice the CNC guys until everything is going bad for them.
Well, that's when I always consider it a plus. When people don't know what you're doing, the system just works. You're doing something right.
Sure.
Yeah, that's it. That is very true. Yep. Okay, so what would be the most spectacular thing that you've seen go wrong in a JDE environment where the CNC was either neglected or under-resourced?
That's a tricky question here. Yeah, obviously, there are a lot of things actually which CNC takes care of, which sometimes actually can be neglected because of the costs to the company. And most of the times, if management is not much keen on some couple of things or the upgrades or taking the new updates from the JD side, then obviously the JD becomes vulnerable over a period of time, which most of the businesses avoid. But yeah, that's the main thing which I see actually, which should not be done whenever there are new security updates or critical updates which is available in the market. We should take it actually. Rather worrying about the cost, which will be later on actually maybe the most bigger revenue losses actually you might have.
Right. Okay. Yeah, there's usually a version of JD Edwards that lives inside a lot of companies that's almost like a ghost, like it was installed years ago, maybe came through an acquisition, and it's just been limping along. You've both seen this. So how common is that picture?
It's still prevalent out there. We still do come across it. We would love everybody to have the latest version of the software, but it's just the sheer reality of getting to the new version is often an impediment to companies in doing so.
Okay. So what's the risk profile in that situation?
It's huge, and it's getting bigger. There are continual releases of vulnerabilities that have been identified in the software, and these get patched with the newer releases, but obviously the older releases aren't being patched, and that extends down to database and operating system, for example. So yeah, the longer you leave it, the more exposed you are to a cyber incident.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true actually. And just to add on to Barry actually over here, if the system is way back actually dated, then obviously it is having a technological dependency on individual team members actually, which is expert on that, definitely yes. But then obviously it is outdated, and if that particular individual leave the company, it is vulnerable to the business as well.
Yeah, and I think as well, Oracle are continually improving and extending the functionality of JD Edwards. So if you're on an old release, you don't have access to all those new capabilities.
True, that's what.
So there's an opportunity cost there as well. You're wearing without being able to use the new functionality.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so what does a standard in-house CNC team look like? And is it usually even a team? Like, you guys, obviously you're a team, but we work for a lot of companies here. So
very seldom see a team in the team sense of the word. Where customers have on-site CNC, it's often one of the technical people that just get dumped with, we're running JD Edwards, you need to look after it. So they don't have the depth and the specialized knowledge that sometimes is required for that. I can't think of any particular site that has a full team of CNC. It's normally one guy.
Yeah.
Who's okay on the day-to-day sysadmin sort of functions, but once things go wrong or there's an upgrade required, they sort of draw blank.
So what happens in that organization if that person leaves or gets sick or just burns out?
Massive exposure. They have a system that's not supported.
That was a blunt way of putting it. Yeah.
Well, there's no way to sugarcoat it, I think, Sacha. If you're whatever size company you are, if you have your JD support reliant on one individual and the individual is not able to fill that role, you're in trouble. You're exposed.
Yeah, it is like a firefighting actually.
Yeah.
If a firefighter is not available and fire is there, actually nobody is there to save it.
Yeah.
If they don't know it.
Yeah, we were talking internally recently. JD Edwards has become incredibly stable. Yeah, we've seen uptimes of months, many months,
Sure.
but things do go wrong. And we had a calamity the other day, which required real deep, intimate knowledge to resolve. So you do need access to people to be able to address that when it happens, which may only be once every couple of years.
So, so there's a talent dimension to all this that I think businesses clearly underestimate. How hard is it to actually find a good CNC specialist, and what do you think the market looks like right now?
It's very hard. Obviously, talent pool is obviously shrinking over there. And obviously, good CNC people, either they don't stay in the market for long, they just either change the domain or they just move somewhere else, which is latest in the market. And obviously, the pool is very, very small at this moment. That's the way I can see it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think one of the other factors is a lot of the people that got in the early days of JD Edwards are now sort of my dinosaur age and aren't interested in staying cutting edge and playing around with the new tech. So I think there's been quite a lot of attrition from that side as well.
So JDE has clearly evolved enormously from the old World and One World days through to Enterprise One and now into OCI. For a business that hasn't kept pace, how far behind can they actually get, and what does that gap cost them?
I guess they could they could be as far behind as they are. The further behind they are, the greater the cost in getting to the latest versions. Oracle have certain stepping points from which upgrades are possible, and if the site is not at that point, there's possibly interim upgrades that are required. We might have to take them from 8.10, 8.12 to 9.0, for example, then do an upgrade from 9.0 to 9.2. So I think it really boils down to the further behind you are, the more risk you are at, and the more effort will take to get you to the new version.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, JD has evolved a lot actually over a period of time. Actually, they are cloud ready. They are having a lot of automations in place. You can integrate JD with anything, even to the AI actually in the current time. Obviously, the longer you wait, the more you just lose the train actually.
Yeah.
So is there a point of no return, like where a system gets so far behind the remediation's almost as expensive as replacing it?
I would say no to that. I think there's always a path forward. It might be cumbersome and convoluted, but as long as it's JD Edwards based system, there will be a path forward. I don't think it'll be a case of replacing JD Edwards with something else.
Okay, so I'm going to move on and talk about Oracle Cloud and JDE on OCI specifically, because that's been a big shift for a lot of organizations. What's driving businesses towards OCI, and what's the CNC dimension of that move?
Are you wanting to focus purely on OCI now? Because obviously, as Oracle partners and from everything that comes out of Oracle, we believe OCI is the superior cloud platform, but it's not limited to OCI. We can run JD Edwards on Google Cloud or Azure or AWS. So how do you want to approach this? Do you want to approach this purely from an OCI specific perspective, or do we talk generic cloud based? I just want to qualify how we respond.
You can talk generic cloud based.
Okay, the advantages of OCI over and above the, Oracle are positioning this as the highest performant, best value for money cloud platform out there, with all the AI bells and whistles included, as it develops. So there's a natural hookup between JD Edwards and those features in OCI, which you're not going to get on the other cloud platforms. We're already playing around with some of the AI capabilities in JD Edwards in OCI, and it's really exciting to see. So I think back to the original question, if we limit it to OCI, there's not really, I don't see a big difference from the pure CNC perspective. You're dealing with databases, networks, compute resources. So if we limit it to JD Edwards and CNC in the cloud, I don't think there's a big difference. It's just happens in a different place. Rather than in a client's data center, you're running in someone else's data center. So in a sense, it makes some of that easier in a sense. We have direct access to the cloud, don't have to go through VPNs, etc.
Does I'll get Hemant to answer this one. Does moving to OCI make the CNC role easier, or does it just shift the complexity somewhere else?
If we are moving to the OCI or any other cloud services, actually, obviously we are having better visibility on hardware which they are using, the database. We can just go ahead and we can check and monitor these things easily nowadays. Earlier, which was kind of a black box for us. Actually, we just needed to go to the hardware vendors or the hardware person actually to get more details on those things. But yeah, obviously it's making our life easier. We can just go ahead and investigate things without much involving the hardware or any other applications related persons over there.
Okay. So I'll ask you about something that probably doesn't get discussed enough these days. So if you're thinking about the security side for JD Edwards, how worried should business leaders be?
If the business has not even patched or reviewed the security in years actually for JD, obviously they should be very much worried, because there are always new vulnerabilities coming in every day. And obviously Oracle JD Edwards is obviously picking those vulnerabilities and they are just patching it up in their tools release, which is always available latest. And customers should take those. So just to avoid all the vulnerabilities which is coming into their environment.
So I think there's another, and maybe there's another dimension to this as well, is, I walked onto sites where, if we look at JD security, I'm now looking at the application security and data access security within the application, where the initial installers have been lazy and they've just granted the full entire employee list access as administrators. So they have unfettered access to all applications and all data. So I think that's another dimension to security, which I think needs to be considered. Is, as Hemant mentioned, there's the software security from a external vulnerability perspective, but there's also the internal security within the application itself, which I don't think should be glossed over.
Yeah, that's quite serious. Yeah.
So it's
so when we talk about outsourcing of the CNC role, what does that actually mean in practice, and what does a company hand over and what do they hang on to?
It means handling their day-to-day platform responsibility, obviously to a specific partner, which is specialist in the CNC activities, whether it is regard to the monitoring of their environment, their patching, if it is related to performance, or obviously if it is kind of a roadmap for the upgrade or any of the application or tools upgrade per se. Yeah, that's how it is.
So have either of you actually had a client come to you after a real disaster?
I haven't. Luckily enough, I haven't. Not after a disaster. So no, I haven't.
What about you, Hemant?
Obviously, for outsourcing, actually, sometimes what people do is actually they just neglect the services actually, which is getting a lot of benefits out of it. But once they don't have the resources, and if they have the major downtime for that, then they just try to rush to the specialist vendors actually to help them in those cases. That's where obviously we get calls sometimes. Even in my previous engagements also, whether it was with Oracle or whether it was with other customers and partners, we got such calls actually middle of the nights out of nowhere. Okay, this is the customer, they need support. And obviously we need to jump on those calls and we need to support.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just going to talk to you about the cost arguments, because it's usually the first thing a CFO wants to hear about is, how is outsourcing CNC going to reduce my costs? Are the savings real, or do they just move the numbers around?
I think it's a bit of both, Sacha, and I think it comes down to the challenges of keeping an engaged CNC person on site. There's not enough, if we look at some of our client base, there's not enough work to keep a proper CNC person fully engaged. They will get bored and move on. So I think one aspect is retaining those people. And depending on where the site is, the life cycle of JD Edwards, as it were, is early in the early days when you're doing the install or the upgrade, there's a lot of CNC work involved. If they're going through any development or integration work, there's again a lot of CNC work. But once things stabilize, the requirement falls off substantially. Then it becomes more of a monitoring, tuning workload. And that's, again, not really a full-time, it shouldn't be a full-time workload for an employee. So that's really where outsourcing makes sense. You bring people in for a couple of hours a week or a couple of days a week, whatever the case is, who do the work and then move on.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Instead of employing a person full time and outsource it, and
it's
a fraction of the amount.
Yeah, absolutely. CNC is not a full-time job in a lot of typical JD Edwards deployments. Not once it's not once you've gone live. It's not a full-time job. So
and to the point, actually, savings obviously are real in that sense, because obviously we are actually available all the time, and obviously we are actually involved actually when there is a real panic and emergency situation, obviously, and outages are there actually, and we can serve the purpose there.
Yeah.
And I think as well, the benefit of outsourcing, you get access to people who've got a far broader range of exposure than if you had someone on site. So they can bring a far broader skill set to play, particularly if there's an issue or an outage or something wrong. They've got a lot more experience to draw on.
That's very true. Actually, that depth of experience can't be underestimated, can it?
Absolutely not. And that has a value in itself.
Yeah. There is a fear, I think, that is quite human, and it's quite understandable, that if I outsource this, I might lose control. So how do you address that?
Customer doesn't lose control actually if they're outsourcing it. Obviously, they gain transparency, and if it is a right partner, obviously the kind of support actually they will get with the experienced resources obviously will be enormous. And obviously, if there is a right partner and if they do the lot of reporting and the discovery and the documentation, actually what they do, then obviously it is quite significant, and obviously it improves and it is visible and measurable benefit for them, for the customers.
Okay.
I think it really comes down to the partner and the sort of contractual negotiations. We're always upfront and open and work to ensure that control is not lost. It's a partnership, just an extension of the customer, really.
So on that note, what should a company be asking of their CNC managed service partner?
I think that depends on what they're after. We could do a full stack managed service from underlying hardware, operating system, right through to JD Edwards and the end user support. What does that client want? They might have strong on, let's assume they're running on-prem. They might have DBAs and network gurus, etc. So, we wouldn't have to be involved there, and we could limit it just to the JD Edwards stack. Or it might be a small client who doesn't have a full IT team, and they could outsource, management of the entire stack to a partner.
All right. Well, I'm going to change topics a little bit. So we're going to look at JDE on OCI specifically, because this is the halfway point for us. For any company that's still on premise, what would be their honest case for moving to OCI?
I guess one aspect would be where they are in their on-prem hardware life cycle. If they've just procured a massive box that has a 5-year extended life, possibly less so. If they're looking at hardware that's reaching end of life, to me, it's a no-brainer at that point. You want to move to the cloud. The advantages of the cloud, you've got the elasticity, you've got the scalability, you've got the flexibility to really spin up and deploy whatever suits best, whatever meets the requirements best. You move your capital expenditure to an operational expenditure. It's literally as easy as pulling out a credit card and signing up for pay-as-you-go with OCI. You can literally do it in, I don't know, what is it, half an hour? You can be up and running in OCI. Literally, it's that.
That's true, yeah.
It could be that quick, CFO might or CIO might walk in one morning, whip out his credit card and sign up for a pay-as-you-go. It is literally that simple and that quick.
And Oracle is actually more focused on having their own applications on OCI actually, and they are having all the tools and technologies to do those things actually in there. Definitely, yes.
So what are the honest risks or complications of that migration that a business leader should keep in mind if they go about that?
There are a lot of factors actually which we need to consider when we are trying to migrate somebody from the JD actually onto the OCI. We need to understand actually their compatibility of their existing network, whether they fit for the lift and shift, or if they need to upgrade their entire stack actually to move to the OCI. So based on those discussions and the requirement from the customer, we need to understand actually what customer needs are and how we can take it forward to them to the either to the OCI or any other cloud platform.
Okay. So when a company moves to OCI, does the CNC outsourcing model become more or less relevant, or does it just change entirely?
It doesn't matter. Doesn't change at all. Whether it is OCI, on-premise, or any other cloud, CNC is always required for them.
Yeah.
Okay. The Orchestrator framework in JD Edwards, like it's obviously it's been described as a game changer. Can you explain what it is in plain terms and why it matters in the context of CNC management?
Well, why it matters is it enables JD Edwards to talk to the outside world in a really simple fashion. It's all based on the REST framework, which is it's a lightweight integration framework which can talk out to unlimited number of other services, and any other integration partner can talk into Orchestrator. So it's really built up of a number of units made up of orchestrations and service requests. Probably don't need to get into all the weeds at this point. But it really opens JD Edwards up in an industry standard way to the outside world. From a CNC perspective, there are the internal components within JD Edwards are also exposed as REST APIs. So we can get JD Edwards to talk to some of the other management components and almost manage itself and create instances, destroy instances, start instances, etc. So we've got JD in the middle. We've got what we term the server management console, which manages the servers and instances. So we can really get the two talking to each other through the REST API, which is really interesting. Things like automated package builds, almost moving into a CI/CD type framework, where we can have an orchestration polling projects and package statuses and automatically doing, for example, a weekly full package build. That can all be automated through the Orchestrator engine.
Would you say that most companies use the Orchestrator well, or is it a capability that's just underutilized?
I think it's totally underutilized.
Yes, definitely. I agree with Barry here massively. It's like actually many businesses have bought the Ferrari, but they never took even the first gear of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they have Orchestrated and they're still doing file-based integrations with all the hassle and management of file-based integrations. Yeah, there's just so many examples of where Orchestrator. Yeah, you go.
And recently, Oracle has done a tremendous job in developing the orchestration, and they have included a lot of platforms, even to the outside AI integrations and all those things to other clouds as well as OCI. Actually, they have a lot of connectors there actually now. But obviously, yeah, it is very much underutilized, like Barry said.
Okay.
And I think the power as well. Back in prior to REST, they used the bit what they call the business services, which was a SOAP-based protocol, which is really you need skilled developers to do anything with that. With Orchestrator, subject matter experts and application consultants are able to create orchestrations to do all kinds of really interesting things with JD Edwards. It's almost a visual builder. It's almost, I suppose one of the terms they're using is zero code or low code approach to changing JD Edwards, which I suppose taking on another tangent here. In the old days, you used to have to go through a whole object management workbench process to make changes to applications. That's now doable through an orchestration and a form extensions. So it's completely transparent and seamless to an upgrade as well, for example. So that's just a small improvement or benefit to using Orchestrator. The whole, it enables the whole user-defined object framework.
So what about AI and automation in the JDE space? Like Oracle's pushing really hard in this direction. And how does that intersect with the CNC role? And does it change the managed services conversation at all?
What we've seen this far is no, well, maybe what we've seen is really that the CNC gets involved in establishing the connectivity between JD Edwards and the AI components within Oracle or OCI. Automation is still in its infancy, I think, and it's something we want to do some more work with.
Yeah, because AI automation is the future actually, because every customer is trying to get a grasp of it. And obviously, JDE has developed inbuilt actually tools for connecting to any of the AI model and using the REST endpoints or any other means actually. Yes, but definitely, if we use it nicely and wisely, we can automate a lot of business processes using AI and automations.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you both something very honest here. Are there situations where outsourcing CNC is not the answer for a company, where they should keep it in-house?
I don't think I've seen any company where that makes sense. Again, it's having access to the breadth of knowledge, multiple team members, versus one person on site who has a very, I guess, the experience is limited to the platform they're working on and the problems they've had to solve up to that point. So I think it's a hard call, Sacha.
Yeah.
But I'm struggling to think of a good case where an on-prem person would make more sense or offer more value.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask you another one that's a bit touchy. What's the worst outsourcing arrangement you've ever seen? So you don't have to name names here, but just explain what went wrong.
Sometimes companies try to choose a cheap providers, generic providers, which may or may not have a JD depth knowledge. That can be a bigger wrong actually.
Absolutely, that's
obviously and obviously if they don't have the skill set and they just try to rush for the thing, then obviously they have slow responses. There can be a finger pointing, and obviously and obviously the customers can save money in these scenarios, but until they have a real incident. Once the real incident comes into picture, they just pay a really dear price to that.
Yeah, I've seen a scenario where a lot of the functionality was outsourced to it was the cheapest provider. It was purely based on cost, and almost everything they did, I was called in after the fact to redo. So they paid for the initial consultant and they paid for my time to resolve the issues. So that was really not a good decision.
True.
If there's a business leader listening to this and thinking, we're that company you described who neglected JDE and went with the cheapest provider, or we've just got one person who holds it all together, no worries. What would be the first thing that they should do?
They should have an honest health check and due diligence of their setup. No sales pitch, but yeah, just to get a clarity actually how their system is, how it is configured, what is plus, what is minus in their system, so that they can just look around and they can fix it if required.
Yeah. There's often an internal IT person who's been the JDE keeper for years, and they feel threatened by the outsourcing conversation. How do you guys manage that dynamic, and what actually ends up happening with that person?
I think it depends to an extent on where that person is career-wise. If they're in the twilight years and they're walking and moving on, it's not an issue, and it might be something they've seen coming. But I think what we typically do is work really collaboratively with them, involve them in any decisions or any changes, sort of explain, if there are changes, explain why and the motivation for the change, and try and keep them on side throughout the process.
Sometimes actually, if there is a setup actually there, and if there is a long time JD keeper, they may be bound to a certain tools and technologies which they work in day out. But obviously, if there are a lot of changes which customer is looking for, then obviously they should look out for the skill set which they need to incorporate. Obviously, then collaboration is definitely required. And obviously, just to let everybody know, actually, outsourcing should relieve them, not replace them. That is not an objective here, actually. We just want to add on to that, actually.
Good point.
Yeah. So obviously on the global scale, like JD Edwards has outlasted many predictions of its death. It's still here. What do you think the next 5 to 10 years looks like for it?
I think I'll be a bit brutal and honest here. When I started my career with JD, I'm hearing from that time onwards that JD is about to die.
Yeah.
But
Likewise.
it's more than 20 years I'm still here, and JD is still thriving. And obviously, it is running the real businesses around the world. And customers who are in JD, they are very loyal to the JD actually. And I think as per the Oracle roadmap perspective, Oracle is actually still having 10 years roadmap ahead, and every year they are just extending it to the next 10 years. The way I see it, JD is not going anywhere. I'm still seeing a lot to be done with JD.
Yeah, absolutely. As Hemant said, the roadmap is 2037 is locked in. JD is supported to at least 2037. Oracle still have an active team developing JD Edwards. We see new functionality coming out every quarter. Yeah, it's not a stale product. It's actively being developed. It's got a large customer base. I see it's got a great future. Look again with all the extensions and improvements, the hooks into AI, the hooks into with Orchestrator. It's not in the twilight of its life by any stretch.
On a funny note, actually, I'm thinking of retiring with JD only.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Well, that brings me to the talent crisis. So it's a broader talent crisis across enterprise ERP platforms. It's not unique to JDE, but I mean, JDE CNC specialists are not exactly a growing population. Should businesses be worried about supply of consulting resources, CNC resources across the next 10 years?
In one way, actually, supply is obviously shrinking, but the demand is stable. And I'm seeing actually a trend that people are still coming into the JD. I'm seeing the new resources. I'm getting the LinkedIn invites from the new people actually who is coming into the JD, and they are just getting to work with the different vendors, different customers all over the world. But it is not that it is not available. The new people are also coming into the JD actually. But yeah, it is a small community. We still need to be taking care of them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think with a 10-year window, there's the supply and the skills are there for a 10-year window. What happens further down the track, we'll have to see what happens from the Oracle side and what happens from the industry side.
True.
If there's a demand for a service, people will step up and meet that demand. So
it's true.
It kind of works both ways.
Yeah.
So, and as someone said, there are I'm going to call them youngsters coming in. Yeah, there is a fresh pool of skills coming into the market, which is good to see.
Yep.
So again, from a 10-year window, it's not as though there'll be a staff for resources within 10 years. So.
If you could change one thing about how business leaders think about their JDE environment, what would it be?
It's not dead and it's not dying.
Exactly. It's not a legacy IT system.
I get so cross sometimes when I hear people go on about the demise of JD Edwards. JD Edwards is not going anywhere. I'm as excited about JD Edwards and the technology as I was almost 30 years ago. That hasn't changed. Yeah.
Right. Well,
I will straightforward say stop seeing JD as a legacy IT. It is not a
Absolutely.
legacy IT. It is evolving along with the latest technology. And obviously,
You know, it's as capable as any SaaS solution now. Yeah,
my very last question here, and I would like for both of you to answer this one. So, if a business was sitting on a neglected JDE environment right now, their resources are tight, and the one person holding it together is tired, give them the one thing they should know that nobody's told them yet.
you are not failing. It's the process which has failed.
yeah, there's
Obviously, JD at a scale is it's not a one-person job. Actually, it's a collaborative effort. A lot of teams come into the picture to implement the proper system in place, whether it is a business process or whether it is underlying hardware or application per se. So we need to understand actually what has been implemented, what is going to be implemented, and it should be thoroughly discussed actually. And everybody should be on page to have the good ideas and better ideas and should be appreciated accordingly.
Yeah, I think I'd say, you know, there's a road ahead and there's a way out of this scenario. And certainly, you know, partners can help you with that. This is not the end.
I just want to say thank you to Barry and Hemant for being so open today. The line I keep coming back to is something Hemant said near the end. If you're struggling, you're not failing. It's the process that's failed, and there is a road forward. If you're sitting on a neglected JDE environment right now, the first step is exactly what they recommended. Get an honest health check, no sales pitch, just clarity on where you actually stand. If you found this useful, please share it with someone who needs to hear it, a CIO, a CFO, or the one person in your business who's been holding everything together on their own. Links to connect with Barry and Hemant are in the description below. I'm Sacha Blomer. Thanks for listening.